Welcome to Across the Park podcast, the only place you can hear banter and debate from both sides of Stanley Park, whether it be blue or red. Sponsored by Their Clothing, Camper Kings UK, and affiliation with BetMate. Hello and welcome to Across the Park Extra, the first unique Across the Park Extra where we're joined by a guest who's played for both football clubs. My name is Ian Mills, the Evertonian. Terry McGivern is the Red. The man I'm talking about played for Liverpool early on in his career. He wound up captaining the Blues, a player I absolutely loved. I was gutted when he left. I'm going to ask him what happened, get all the answers from him. But first of all, Terry's going to speak to him first. It is, of course, Mr. Don Hutchison. Don, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm all good, mate. How are you guys?
All good. All good. We were just
saying...
Yeah, we are. We're going to ask you a bit about that at the end of the show, if that's okay, in relation to your thoughts on both clubs. But I'll be honest with you, I'm just looking forward to being able to sit in the grounds and watch football with fans.
I'll bet, mate. It's been a tough time for everyone, hasn't it? Players, especially the fans. I mean, sometimes, you get a little bit carried away and a little bit blasé in terms of, you're playing at Anfield and you're playing at Goodison and you're playing at Old Trafford and all the amazing stadiums, and then when something like this happens, it hits you how much you need the fans and how so important they are.
Yeah, I went to a game in May. There was 6,000 fans at Goodison for the Wolves game, and it was surreal because the noise, your Z cards would hit and you would cheer it. You get the Everton fans singing the Everton song and then it would be silence. It would just go so quiet. So to get 40,000 fans back in there singing songs and cheering the corners and the throw-ins and the tackles, absolutely can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool, isn't it? Pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's on. I think obviously, first place to start is on the Liverpool side of things. So obviously, it was an early point in your career when you went to Liverpool, and I might not look at it at the moment, but I was only around probably 5 at the time. When you signed,
he's gone with the young
Liverpool.
Card. He's played the young card early doors.
No, but so because it was 1990, am I right in saying from Hartlepool? Yeah. How did that come about, and who was it who sort of instigated the sign? Was it Daglish? Was it?
What it was, I was playing for Hartlepool at the time, and I just broke into their first team, and I was playing in their first team for about sort of 5, 6, 7 months, and we drew Tottenham in a cup game, Hartlepool-Tottenham, and obviously Gaza was at Tottenham and Lineker and all the superstars at the time, and pretty sure if my memory's correct, we drew at the Victoria Ground and then got the replay at White Hart Lane. And in the game at the Victoria Ground, I played really well up against Gaza, who's obviously born around the corner from me in Gateshead, John Moncur and all the superstars that they had at the time. And I had one of my best games against Tottenham. We were second division at the time. And we then got the return leg at White Hart Lane. And then Gaza, they beat us 5 and Gaza scored 3. And he was just amazing. And he was too good. But the chairman at the time was a guy called Gary Gibson, who was obviously trying to look out for Hartlepool United. And he had the sort of bright idea, which I've never heard of since, and obviously it won't happen these days because of the scouting network, but he sent the DVD of the game to all of the Premier League clubs to sort of watch, just in case any scouts weren't there attending. And the response was crazy. There was Glasgow Rangers were interested, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Man United. There was loads of clubs that were interested just on the back of this video. And then Kenny rang me one Sunday morning after a game. And I was at my mum and dad's house, and he rang me, and my mum sort of put me on the phone, and Kenny sort of said hello, said who he was, and I told him to F off because I thought it was Joe Allen on a wind-up. So I put the phone down, and the next thing it rang back again, and he went Don, it's Kenny, and then you realise it's someone's accent, and you went, oh, I said, I'm really sorry. I said, Joe Allen's a bit of a prankster at Hartlepool. I thought he was winding me up, and he said, he was very courteous, very polite. He knew the scenario because on the Saturday, he rang me on the Sunday, but on the Saturday, I'd sort of verbally agreed after the home game to sort of go and join Aston Villa, not even speaking to the manager, not even speaking about contracts or anything. It was just how it was done back in the day. And Kenny sort of knew this. He was very clued up, and he went, listen, I know you'd give your word to Villa. He went, but will you just do me the honour of you and your dad coming down to Anfield? Let me meet you, have a look around the place, show you Anfield, show you the Kop, this, that, and the other. I mean, at the time, I didn't see what was happening, but you can quite clearly see the picture, what's going to unfold. And he said, then we'll obviously put you on a train and you can go to Birmingham and go and sign for Villa. So it was like, yep. We've done that. I took my dad down there with me, who was a miner from Gateshead, who'd been down the mines for 35 years. So I didn't even have a tie. So he wouldn't let me go and meet Kenny Dalglish without a tie. So he took his working man club's tie off, made me wear the Dunstan Excelsior tie. So that's the tie I've got on in the picture. And then once I met Kenny, and then it was just a brilliant routine, really. Met him, showed me the home and away dressing rooms, walked me down the tunnel, touched the sign, out on the pitch, all the famous ends, and then he showed me the Cop end. And then I was, ridiculously impressed because I've never even been to Anfield before, not been to Liverpool, not been to any gigantic stadium apart from divisions clubs in League Two. And then he sort of walked me through the bowels of the stadium, up a few stairs, showed me the trophy room, which was just endless. And then right at the end of the trophy room, the chairman was sitting there through these oak sort of double doors on this massive table with a contract and a pen. And we all just sort of looked at each other and thought, well, there's no way I'm not signing that. Like, he's got me hook, line and sinker. He didn't even need to do it, but it was just a brilliant little routine that he went all the way through, just in case I had no idea what the football club was about. And I went from £27.50 to £500. Wow. And it was like fortunes.
Yeah, absolutely. And how old would you have been at that point then?
I was 18, just 18 and a half.
Right. And I mean, what obviously, spoken there about how it felt when you go to Anfield and you meet someone of obviously Dalglish's stature and stuff, but obviously Liverpool at that time, we were still coming off the back of a very, very successful decade in football. What does that feel like? Like what does that feel like when a club of that stature
it's incredible that it's actually difficult to put into words, because when you come from a club like Hartlepool, which is bottom of League Two, and you're getting paid £27.50, which was amazing at the time. And if someone said to me these days, look, would you go back and have that year at Hartlepool and live on that money? Absolutely, because everything was pure. You had one pair of trainers, one pair of jeans, one T-shirt, a jacket, and it was, you spend £27.50 because that's what you had. But then you go to Liverpool and you see the size of the football club, and you understand, if you love football, or even if you're not a Red, and you're someone like me who's a Newcastle fan, you understand, and when you're 13, 14, 15, how big the football clubs are, how gigantic the football clubs are, and you understand the history. And then you go into the stadium and then you get changed in the dressing rooms. And at the time, it was a weird one because Melwood was Melwood, but they didn't have a canteen there. They didn't have any facilities there. So the routine at the time was we used to get changed. First team would get changed in the home dressing room. The reserves and the youth players, like I was, got changed in the away dressing room. Then we'd walk out of Anfield and we'd get on the team coach. The team coach then used to take us to Melwood to train. We'd then train, get back in the coach, and then back to Anfield for shower, bath, food, and then go home. But it was amazing, but it was so scary when you get on that team bus and you see people like Ronnie Whelan, Steve McMahon, Peter Beardsley, Annan Hansen, John Barnes, Ian Rush, Bruce Grobbelaar, and the list goes on and on and on and on of superstars. And you're at this football club where you think, have I won a competition? Am I meant to be here? Yeah. And then you start making friends, and Steve McManaman was a good friend of mine. So we used to sit in the front of the coach every day. And then not long after that, Jamie Redknapp then signed from Bournemouth, who me and him got on really well because, like me, I came from Hartlepool and he came from Bournemouth. So we had so much in common. We ended up being in digs together alongside a guy called Mark Kenny from Ireland, who was just a bundle of laughs. And we just had the most amazing time being youngsters and being kids and a little bit naive, trying to force your way into the first team. But really you've got no chance because the guys you're trying to take places off are Liverpool legends. But then everyone has their time, and Father Time catches up to everyone. And eventually you sort of make your way past one or two of these players into the first team. And then it hits you how big the football club is when you're playing for them. Yeah.
So, I mean, your actual, at what point was it when you made that step into the first team? What was, who was the manager who gave you your sort of, your main shot in the first team?
It was Graham Souness, because when I signed in 1990, I think in memory, after the 4-4 game against Everton, then, Kenny packed in the next morning, which feels in my memory, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm out a month or two, but it felt like I was only there something like 7-8 months under Kenny. Might be a bit longer, might be a bit shorter. So it felt as though that's hard because the manager that signed you has then moved on. And it was obviously quite tragic circumstances because he was obviously really stressed and and got really stressed about the situation. So he had to look after obviously his welfare. And then you're thinking like, what happens here? Because I've never done this before. I've never signed for a club and a manager leaves and a new one takes over. But luckily for me, Graham Souness got the job, who was just one of the best managers alongside people like Peter Reid and Howard Kendall I've ever played for, because man's man, didn't mess around, didn't need to give you any flannel if you've had a good game. I wasn't the type of guy that needed a pat on the back and a million words said in the press. Just a pat on the back of the head from a manager and a well done was enough for me, and that was Graham. And he had the hard task of getting rid of all those players that I mentioned before, because their day had sort of gone, if you like, because they were all past their prime. They're all 32s and 33s, if not a bit more, apart from Barnes, he was about sort of 30, 31. And he had to try and replace them with Robbie Fowler, Steve McManaman, myself, Jamie Redknapp, Steve Harkness, Rob Jones. So the core youngsters were there, and he played us. I can remember going to Sheffield Wednesday one day, about sort of 6 or 7 games in, and we went to Sheff Wed, and he named me and Steve McManaman up front at Sheff Wednesday, and he dropped someone like Ian Rush and John Barnes to the bench, and we were like, wow, what's happened here? But he needed to make that transition, Graham. And I think he said it since. I think he said the only thing that he got wrong at the time, because what we had at the time, Terry, we had a bunch of youngsters that were really good and a bunch of experienced players that were legends, but we had no 25, 26, 27-year-olds. We had no gap in between. Yeah. So we were then, like the class of 92 at Man United, we were then trying to win leagues. Jamie's come from Bournemouth. I've come from Hartlepool. Mark Kenny's come from Ireland. We're expected to go in the Premier League and try and win a title for Liverpool.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It was never going to happen, but, you give it your best shot.
Yeah, and I think, as Liverpool fans, I know Souness, it's a bit of a prickly relationship with, in terms of some Liverpool fans' minds because of other things. But I always speak to my dad, and he's basically one of my dad's favourite players. And I think as Liverpool fans, when I look back at it, I always hear the message that he sort of, as you just said, he was a great manager. He just wasn't almost a respecter of. He wanted to win, and it was almost like, I'm not going to let anyone have an easy ride in terms of. I want to change the way things happen. By all accounts, he was a bit more involved in the nutrition and stuff like that, which a lot of the older players were probably looking at it thinking, we didn't do any of this and we've won everything.
Exactly.
So it's a pretty tough situation that I suppose he found himself in at that time.
He did. And he came from Torino, where he obviously played, and he tried to bring that culture in and the food and try and change the diet. But it was in that culture where the early 90s was, for a professional footballer, it was a drinking culture.
Yeah,
Arsenal had it, we had it, Man United had it. They were the class of 92. Every time we went to Manchester, they were out. They were winning titles, so they got away with it. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to change all of that. So you can imagine putting yourself in the gaffer's shoes, where he's trying to change all of that. He's trying to bring all these young players through the door. He's trying to play them, giving them experience. But he's looking at 1 or 2 of the older players, or if not 4 or 5. He realises that he's got to ship them on because it's a little bit of a power struggle. He's not going to keep them on, and they potentially could destroy the dressing room. So he knows he's a clever man. He's been at Rangers and he's been around the world, so he knows how dressing rooms work. And he knows he's got to make some tough decisions, and he moved a lot of them on. But it was just the timing. Man U ended up being, ridiculously good with Bruce and Pallister and Cantona and the young players that they were bringing through, and people like Roy Keane, fantastic players. Dennis Irwin, another one. Arsenal was strong at the time. There was always teams in and around the Premier League that were strong, and it's never a case. You look at it now, don't you? And you think if a Liverpool team had their worst ever season last season because of injuries and some of the results and performances, and they finished 3rd, it's not a bad season. But Liverpool back then were winning titles or winning FA Cups. They were at Wembley every other season, alongside Everton after a little while. So it was the Merseyside, the 2 Merseyside clubs were constantly at Wembley. That was the Scousers' second home. So to go from winning titles, winning trophies, to where we finished, which was 5th, 6th or 7th, it was that's bad for Liverpool, but it was bad for the time. I feel for him, because with a little bit more time, maybe he would have done a good job. And I've got nothing but love for him, because he was the one that gave me my debut. Yeah,
it's interesting that you mentioned. I've got a little story here. So you mentioned that you're good mates with Jamie Redknapp, and I think you've mentioned that in other interviews and things in the past. You and Jamie get on really well or whatever. But I actually remember. Do you remember the Showcase Cinema in Liverpool? So
yeah,
I remember going to see Jurassic Park with my mum and dad, which must have been, I looked it up before, it was 93. So it would have been 8. I remember I think it was you, Redknapp, and it might have been Mike Marsh. Yeah. If I remember rightly.
Could have been.
We're in the Showcase. I remember running up and getting autographs. I've probably still got it in my mum's attic upstairs.
Brilliant. Yeah. It was funny because we used to go down to the Showcase Cinema because there was a Pizza Hut there and a few little restaurants at the time, because me and Jamie were in digs at the time, and our digs lady was the worst cook ever, but she was just an absolute diamond and you could never fault her. So do you remember the movie Midnight Express?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really famous old movie. So we'd be having our dinner and the potatoes would be like rock hard and the broccoli might be rock hard, and it was like, bless her, she tried, and she was like a lovely, lovely lady. And we had code words for, like, you know, shall we sack this dinner off? And the code word was Midnight Express. So if we said Midnight Express, we put as many potatoes and broccoli in our pockets to then look as though we finished the meal, and then drive down to where the Showcase was and go into Pizza Hut and have a pizza.
Class. But yeah, I just remember it. Like, I think I was with my dad, and he was like, "There's Redknapp, there's Hutchison," and that. He was like, "Yeah," and I've got the ticket and got autographs on the back. But it's just a standout memory. Like, I think it was one of the first times that I went like autograph. I was like, "Can I do autograph?"
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But obviously, you know, you've gone through that period with Souness, and it was a tough one for Liverpool Football Club. But it moved into the Roy Evans era, and as you mentioned there, you know, some brilliant young players coming through at that time, you know, like Robbie Fowler and stuff. How was that transition to the Roy Evans era? And, you know, in terms of being part of that, what it's being a little bit of called, you know, the Spice Boy sort of reign as we got up to 96. I know you left slightly before that, but how was that sort of, you know, period at Liverpool under Evans?
Well, again, different because in a short period of time, you've lost 2 managers. I've lost 2 managers, and Liverpool have lost 2 managers in legends in Kenny and Graham. So again, like, you go back to where you were before, where you think, right, well, you know, Graham loved me, I loved him, he was playing me. What happens next? But we were lucky because obviously Roy was on the coaching staff at the time, so he was his sort of number 2 or number 3, and he was coming through the boot room destined to be a manager. So I'd like to think he would have had an input with Graham in terms of the starting 11 or the squad. So when he come in, amazing, great guy, absolute diamond guy. I was just getting pressured from West Ham to go and join them. And that's sort of how it worked at the time. Me and Jamie were living together. Jamie would speak to his dad. His dad would then come on the phone and then go, "Oh, Hutch, you'd love it at West Ham, you know, down in London, you'd love it. Yeah, it's a great football club," and sell it to me. And I was like, no, I'm like, I'm all right, I'm good. But then he sort of like, you know, every day. And then I wasn't too smart away from the pitch. I was a daft lad from Gateshead who caused stupid problems for a club the size of Liverpool, enjoying myself and Iron Apper and whatnot, and doing a bungee jump, front page of the Daily Star, you know, Liverpool player could have killed himself doing a bungee jump. And it's like, I just didn't see it at the time. I just thought it was normal lads' behaviour. And then obviously Roy had the job and took the job, and then it was a quick period of time where he never wanted me to leave. But the bid then came in from Harry and West Ham, and he sat me down and he went, "Listen," he went, "I'll turn the bid down if you want. I do not want to go." And I went, "Well, I don't want to go. Like, you know, I'm at the biggest club in the world, but, you know, I'm sort of not playing. I couldn't get myself in the first team because Roy had sat me down. He went, "Listen, you know, you've done some daft things over the last 6 months. You're going to have to calm down and just let everything settle. You know, just concentrate on your football, get your head down," which I was more than willing to do. But then, you know, you sort of get a bit impatient once you've had a taste of first team. You sort of want to play more. And biggest regret of my life, you know, was taking that phone call from Harry, even though, you know, I played for West Ham and it's a good football club. But I made the wrong move at the wrong time. I shouldn't have went. I should have stayed. And it beats me up when a good pal of mine, Jamie, was there for like 10 years. Yeah. And I'm not shy in saying I'm a little bit envious, because you never know if I got my head down and went through that period, I might have been there for the same time. So even though you've had a career and I've been lucky enough to play for some amazing clubs, you have that little niggle in what might have happened, you know?
Yeah, no, and obviously, you know, when you see yourself at them other clubs, you know, and I've seen where your career went then, and you reached, you know, levels where, as you say, you maybe would have been a mainstay in that Liverpool team right the way through the 90s. You know, I suppose we'll never know, but, you know, I think it's, it's one of them situations, isn't it? As you just said there, you can look back at it maybe with a bit of regret, but at the same time, you know what I mean? Everything happens for a sort of reason.
The weirdest one I had, and Ian won't like this story, but the weirdest one I had is when I was at Everton, I was in my prime, and my head was screwed on, playing for a great club again, great manager in Howard Kendall, and Walter Smith took over. And I got a phone call from my agent, and Scotland were playing Croatia in Croatia. And I always like to be under pressure. I never really played well. You know, like when Liverpool lost against like Bristol City or Bristol Rovers in the Cup, and West Ham drew like Doncaster or Rotherham. I was hopeless in them games. Like I needed like adrenaline to play, and I needed like England, Scotland. I needed Liverpool, Everton. I needed Newcastle, Sunderland. I thrived on the occasion. And I took a phone call from the agent in the afternoon of the Scotland-Croatia game. And he said, got some news for you. And I went, go on. He went, make sure you play well tonight, will you? And I've gone, why? And he went, Liverpool want to buy you back. And I was at Everton at the time.
Wow.
And it was Gerard Houllier was the manager, and he'd been to watch me for a number of games at Everton, and I was in my prime and I was playing well. And he said, just make sure you play well tonight. He said, because you might be the first player that's ever done Liverpool, Everton, Liverpool, and played for Liverpool twice. So I loved that. I loved that extra pressure on the game. An hour and a half before the game, Craig Brown comes up to me and he goes, do you mind if I ask you a favour tonight? And I've gone, yeah, go on. He went, can you man mark someone for me? And I've gone, well, I said, I'll do it. I said, but I've never done it before. He went, well, how hard can it be? He went, just stand on someone, stop someone from playing, and that's what I want you to do. So I went, all right, I'll do it. So I went, who am I marking? And he went, Prozoneski, who was Real Madrid, Barcelona.
Yeah.
He was one of the best, best you've ever seen, Zidane-like sort of player. So I done that. He ripped me apart. And Igor Biscan had an unbelievable game against John Collins. And then the story goes, Liverpool signed Igor Biscan. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, his gaffer's killed me. Gaffer's killed me.
Yeah, I'll be honest, that's the first time I've heard the story. So
the podcast. Well, it was at the time where we'd lost, again, timings-wise, we'd lost Nick Barmby, obviously, to Liverpool. So I'm not sure where that was, whether that was just before or just after. I can't quite remember.
That was with you around the same time, yeah?
Yeah. So he went from Everton, to Liverpool. And that was the bizarre sort of sliding doors moment that I got a man mark to ask the man mark Prozoneski, and he obviously ripped me apart because he was unbelievable. And Biscan played well against John Collins.
Oh, that would have absolutely killed me. That would be a very different podcast you'd be on tonight, Mr. Hutchison.
It would have been, wouldn't it? It would have been one of them. Get him off.
You would have been on a podcast with me and one of the other Reds, Gary
exactly.
Liverpool legend.
You were talking there, and great honesty that you do have regrets in the fact that it didn't quite work out at Liverpool. For me, as an Evertonian, it worked out really well for me because I got to see you in a blue shirt, and that happened in February 1998. You'd worked with Howard Kendall before at Sheffield United. I've heard you on podcasts prior to this. Really love Howard. Was he a big pull in the move to Everton for you?
The only pull, to be honest, Ian, because obviously I was with him at Sheffield United the first time I've ever met him and played under him. And as you know, mate, everyone loves Howard. Yeah. Everyone adores him. You can walk into any room. If there's a room full of women, he'll be charming. If there's a room full of football fans, he'll talk football, he'll talk music. He's just everyone's best friend. And I adored the guy. And I dislocated my shoulder in the playoff final, Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace. So then Howard moved on that summer, but I was obviously rehabbing, so I wasn't fit, to sort of make the move. But I was pestering him all the time because, you're at Sheffield United, you've missed out on the playoffs, and you're playing for a good club in Sheffield. But Everton, obviously, like Liverpool's another level. And then he took Carl Tyler and he took Mitch Ward.
That's right, yeah.
So I'm like phoning him and going, Gaffer, any chance? You took Carl Tyler, you took Mitch Ward. I went, any danger? And he was like, yeah, bide your time, lad. Get yourself fit. He's like, bide your time, lad. Get yourself fit, lad. I'll come in for you. And then I got myself fit. And then obviously, he called me and I made the move. And that was just like amazing for me.
Yeah.
Back in the Premier League, I'd missed a couple of years being away from it at Sheffield, but being back on Merseyside as well, because I've always said Geordies and Scousers are very similar, very similar cultures, hands-on, graft, you work hard. My dad was on mine for 35 years. I'm good mates with a lot of Scousers. The humour's the same, fashion's the same. Everyone loves their football on Merseyside like Newcastle. And I knew going to Everton, I knew I was going to play well. I knew I was going to do well because of the football club, because of the Premier League, and obviously because of Howard.
Your first game, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was Newcastle at home, and the reason I remember it is because Gary Speed came back, God rest his soul. He came back for the first time, and it was very hostile. Evertonians weren't too happy at the fact that he'd gone, and your debut was that game. You'd played at Goodison in the Merseyside derby in the red shirt. Can you remember that game and the atmosphere and thinking at some point, I'll play for these fans, passionate?
Oh. Well, obviously, obviously the derby games were something else back then. I mean, they still are. But back then, they were just amazing because the atmosphere was just raucous, and you lived your life for derby games, the fans. And I remember obviously playing for Liverpool at Goodison. I think Mo Johnson might have got a winner.
That's right, yeah, Peter Beardsley, yeah.
That's it. And I can remember being like, wow, when I come away from that, going, watch this happen there, because the 90 minutes just flew by. And then obviously I was at Liverpool at Goodison, high up in the main stand for the 4-4, Kenny's last game.
Yeah.
Which was just a ridiculously good game, iconic game. So I always had the sort of feeling I knew what this place was like. I knew the atmosphere was incredible. And then, I remember talking to Howard beforehand, and obviously there was a bit of falling out between himself and Gary Speed because Howard couldn't see why Speedo would leave Everton, who were a massive football club, and obviously Howard, in Howard's eyes, the biggest in the world. Why go to someone like Newcastle? So I think they fell out, and whatever the story goes, I'm not too sure. But I remember asking me what number I wanted when I went to Everton. And I said, I'm not bothered, Gaffer. Like, I'm not fussed about numbers. And he went, take number 10, take Speedo's number. And I went, honoured. Number 10's number 10 anyway, because of Gary Speed. Obviously, I would take it. So yeah, I remember that. I can't remember too much about the game, but I remember the atmosphere.
Yeah. We'll get to Coventry, because Coventry was a massive part of that season. I imagine still a massive part of when you look back at the Everton career. But just prior to that, we'll go from February to May, and we weren't playing well. We couldn't win games. Was there any point you were thinking this is the wrong move? I'm going to end up back down by Sheffield United to come back up?
No, never ever felt as though it was the wrong move. I just thought we were in a. Again, when I look at the team and I look at the squad, I mean, we weren't the worst team in the world. But for some reason, we just couldn't buy a win. We had no consistency whatsoever. We went through, people like John Spencer and Mikael Madar before we ended up with Kevin Campbell and the sort of better players like Materazzi and Decor. Yeah. But we went through that Howard era where the players weren't bad. But Howard always said to me, I can remember being at Sheffield United before he went to Everton, and I sat in the team coach with him. And we were coming back after a game, and I was just chewing the fat with him, just talking football, just talking out loud. I can remember asking him something random about, like, when you're buying players and you're picking a side, like, what'd you pick? What'd you look for? And I'll never forget it. He said to me, if you buy Championship players, you'll end up in the Championship. Oh. If you buy Premier League players, you'll be in the Premier League. And with that, I'm not going to throw Carl Tyler and Mitch Ward under the bus whatsoever, because I was a Championship player, and I was until I got, obviously at Everton. But I felt as though we had like Mikael Madar and John Spencer and a few of us that were probably bottom half of the Premier League. So we were where we were, it was like, got to graft, we've got to grind. This club can't go down. It's never been down before. Certainly never want to take it down while Howard's in charge. But it was tough, mate. As you know, you guys were watching it. It was tough. It was tough to play in.
Oh, big time. Moving on to Coventry, we've had guests on this podcast. We've had Danny Cadamartri, we've had Gareth Farrelly, Alan Myers, we've even had Tony Grant, who sat in the stands that day injured. And we've always tried to break it down into sort of three parts, if you don't mind. First part is full-time, the week prior, Arsenal 4, Everton 0. Going into that week at Belfields, were you really feeling the pressure, or did you turn around to be excited? Or
no, and funny enough, someone tweeted me the day, "What you doing?" And I was in my bed about 10 o'clock at night, and someone said the infamous Arsenal Everton game's on live, not live, but in full on Sky. So I watched it the other day, and I thought, I'm not watching this because I should have been sent off 3 times in that game. I was watching it, one of them where I have to watch, but I'm thinking I know what's coming. And I can remember Howard before the game, he picked Slaven Bilic as a holding midfield player.
You're right, yeah.
Slaven scored an own goal after 5 minutes. Right, and I can remember thinking, like, we are knackered here. Like, we are proper knackered, because this is the best team the best team by far in the Premier League, with Overmars and all the Galacticos that they had. And I'm thinking that we are knackered here. Like, we are not scoring 2 goals here with a defensive back 4. Myself and Slaven Bilic in midfield. Dunk was up front. Nick Barmby played, I think, alongside him or just off the right-hand side.
I think Peter Beagrie played, yeah, you're right.
Peter Beagrie played, yeah. And it was like we were just massively out of our depth, and it was 4. It was 4 going on 8.
Yeah.
Like Overmars was just, Dave Watson's playing at the back.
Yeah.
And Waggy was like 39, and Overmars is like Usain Bolt, you know what I mean? It was ridiculous. And the goals are going in. And as the goals are going in, the chances are getting missed. Yeah. Easy chances, post, crossbar, sitters, and you're playing and thinking, and all that's happening to me is red mist is coming. I'm going to get sent off here today. Like, my head's absolutely gone. And I've gone through Petit, should have been a red. Gone through Vieira twice, should have been 2 reds. And how I got away, I think I might even have got a yellow, I'm not even sure. How I got away with that and come away from that, then being allowed to play in the Coventry game was just an absolute miracle.
And then we move on to Coventry. 1-0, Gareth Farrelly. The ground was absolutely bouncing. And Don, I've told the story before. I swear to God, this is what happens. When we missed the penalty, it started raining. It started pissing down. The thunder came, the lightning. Dion Dublin scores. And if you watch that goal back now on YouTube, you still hear the gasp from Evertonians and the anxiety for those last 6 or 7 minutes. What was it like on the pitch for you?
Worst feeling I think I've ever had in football. The night before the game, Howard took us over the water somewhere, and typical Howard, on the morning of the game, he took us for tea and scones because he thought that might relax us a little bit and take our mind off the game. So we're sitting New Brighton somewhere having tea and scones on the morning of the biggest game in the world. And then we come on the team coach down towards Goodison, and I don't think I'm over-exaggerating when I say there was about 50,000 people on that one road, and every one of them were banging on the team coach. Like, you're looking in guys' faces, you're looking at women, you're looking at kids. They're anxious, they're all over the place. Their emotions are shot to bits, and we've not even kicked off. And we get in, Howard names the team, does the team talk. We go out there. I mean, I wish I could swear, but everyone was crapping themselves down the tunnel, going out to Z cars. The fans were just, it was electric. It was electricity in the stadium that day for all the right reasons and the wrong reasons, because everyone was just so scared of going down.
Yeah.
No one knew what was happening. We're going to win, we're going to lose. We got smashed the week before. We had no form whatsoever. We had no consistency. Our team weren't the best. We're playing against Cov, who didn't have too much to play for, but still dangerous.
Yeah.
And then we take the lead. Gareth Farrelly scores the best goal he's ever scored in his lifetime on his right foot. You know, he fades one into the top corner. We go ballistic. We go away to the right-hand side. We're all jumping on top of him. And then, as you said, the pen's missed.
Yeah.
And then Dion Dublin, ironically, I work with now every Monday with the Premier League. And every time I see him, like, it just gives me shivers. He scores a header. And how Thomas Myra has not saved it, I'll never know, because he's got it. He's got it in his hand.
Yeah.
But he was colourblind, Thomas. I remember playing in one game. And I said to him at half time, all you've got to do, Thomas, is stick the ball as far up the pitch as you can. I'll run on the diag and I'll win every single header and get us going from there. And he whispered in my ear, he went, Hutch, I can't see that far, mate. He went, I'm colourblind. He's in goal last day of the season, right? Like, great lad, like great goalie in that, and like funny guy. And it's gone through his hands. And then what did you say was left on the clock? 10 minutes?
I think it was less. I think they scored in around 84, 85, and it was just anxiety everywhere. I was there, and it was like, couldn't watch, turning around at times and looking for scores and things.
Well, it's weird because everything about your DNA and everything you've been taught from every single coach, and especially Howard, is look after the ball. But when you get a day like that, you think, not that I don't want the ball, but what I need to do just to get through this scenario and get through these 6 minutes, I need to launch it in the channel.
Yeah.
Because if that ball's down in that channel, I mean, Terry will have nightmares when I mentioned Channel and John Barnes, and obviously, it's one of them. It's like, but if that ball's in that channel, the opposition can't score. Coventry cannot score if that ball's in the channel. But your DNA is saying, like, stick a few passes together. But your brain, the atmosphere, the electricity in the stadium won't allow you to try a trick, just in case it doesn't come off and Coventry score. And then you're that guy who gives the ball away when Everton went down. So you stick it in the channel, They go long ball, you stick it in the channel. And that 6 minutes, I swear to God, that six minutes took 25 minutes.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
I can remember looking at the clock, and I looked at the clock on something like 89, And I remember getting a ball and I stuck it right over the fullback into the channel, and it felt like 3 minutes later. And I've looked at the clock and it was like 90. And I've gone, what? 60 seconds? Just like, felt like 4 minutes. and then that final whistle went, mate. And I have never seen so many fans on a stadium in the centre circle crying on their hands and knees, like praying and like, it was horrible, mate. It was horrible. The horriblest game I think I've ever played in.
It was unthinkable for me because I think financially the club were not the best, and if he'd have left the Premier League, you don't know what would have happened. So it was a lot of relief. I mean, I keep checking your teammates we've had on the podcast. Michael Ball was one, and he said after the game, he said he really felt for Howard because Howard had a relationship with Bawley, and Bawley's dad, he signed him for Everton. I think you've got a similar relationship with Howard with so much respect and love. Did you feel for Howard after that game?
Unbelievably, mate, because me and him were best of mates, and I would have died for Howard. I loved him because I'd lost my dad a few years earlier, and Howard was then that father figure for me. I could knock on his door at any given time. Yeah, as you know, you could sit and have a beer with Howard if you, as I said before, great in any company. And I can remember, and someone asked me, I don't know, 15 years ago, if you could have 60 seconds back of your career, what would it be? And I always think it would be Hartlepool because, as I said before to Terry, and you know, everything was pure back then. You were playing because you weren't playing for money, because you were on 27.50, one pair of jeans, one pair of trainers. Everything was just, this is proper footy, this. But then I thought about it and I thought, if I could really have my 60 seconds back, I can remember being in the home dressing room and the music went on and a few of the lads were drinking champagne, as you sort of do. It feels wrong because you shouldn't be in that situation, but you do because it's just a relief. And I can remember Adrian Heath was down there, Viv Busby was down there. Lads are all sort of surrounding. The atmosphere in the dressing room was amazing. But everything was really crystal clear where I couldn't see Howard. I couldn't find him. And I was looking and I got off my seat where I sat and I went to Inchy and I went, where's the gaffer? And he went, he'll be in the boot room. First door on the left-hand side, obviously. So I've come out the door, home dressing room, first door on the left-hand side. It was like a little bit of it was like a jar, like a tiny bit. So it was pitch black in there. So I could see that it wasn't closed. So I knocked on the door and there was no answer. And I knocked on the door again and I opened it as I knocked on the door. And Howard was sitting in a chair in the boot room on his own, crying like a baby. Wow. And I shut the door. It gives me goosebumps now. And I shut the door behind us. I didn't put the light on. I shut the door behind me. And I walked over to him. He come out of his seat. And the two of us just stood in the dark. And I was embracing him for like, again, it felt like about an hour, but it was probably like a minute or two, if that. But it was like, that was like the best minute I've ever had in my life. And he was crying. I was crying. He was just so relieved. Because obviously, you know, he's an iconic figure then. He didn't want to be the man that took them down because that would have just, it would have been horrible for him. And we hugged for like ages. And if someone said to me, like, you've got 60 seconds to go back and do something in your career, it would be that moment where I shut the door and hug Howard.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Give me goosebumps there, Don. Just thinking about.
Honestly, I feel like crying. It's
amazing. And then unfortunately, you know, it was Howard's time was up. He'd kept Everton up in a tough year. In comes Walter Smith. He brings in two midfielders straight away: John Collins, Olivier Decourt. Gareth Farrelly told us that straight away. Walter told him, "You can go." Tony Grant told us that a similar conversation happened a year later. Was there a conversation with you because you didn't start the season? It took a while for you to break through.
Exactly the same story as the guys. Walter got me in up in the office and he said, just to let you know, Don, you can find another club. And I went, what do you mean? And he went, well, I've just signed John Collins from Monaco. I just signed Olivier Decourt, I think from Fiorentina, I think. Or was he from Leeds? I can't remember which one.
No, he went to Roma. He came from Strasbourg in France. He was highly rated.
Yeah. So he come in and I wasn't cocky with him, but I can remember backing my ability and he said, you can leave, you can find yourself another club because you're not going to play because I've signed these two boys and they're going to play. And I said to him, I'm better than these two. I said, I'm not leaving. I said, I'm better than Decourt. Didn't know anything about him at the time. I said, I'm better than John Collins. And I was backing myself, like I weren't being arrogant. And he liked it, Walter. Walter was a tester. He was a tester of players. He was a proper tester. And I got a million stories on Walter, how he tested players. And he said to me, well, what do you want to do? Then I went, well, I'm staying. That's because I said, I'm better than those two. And I can remember Everton did at the time, and most clubs normally do this. It's probably not a thing these days, but first teams normally play a reserve game. Sorry, they play a game. So it was Everton at the time. So we played a game at Goodison the Saturday before the Premier League starts, and it was first team versus reserves and young kids. So the first team's the first team. Me and Granty and Gareth fuming, but we're all in the the Resi side, if you like. So John Collins gets the ball midfield 5 minutes in. I nail him in a 50-50 because my head was gone, and he didn't like it. So every time John Collins got it, because he was a good footballer, John, excellent pass of the ball, he popped it off. And then 15 minutes later, Ollie got it, and I nailed him in a 50-50, and I went right over the top. But Ollie loved it. So I got the ball 5 minutes later, and Ollie nailed me. Wow. So we spent the whole 90 minutes nailing each other because my head was gone, and Ollie's thinking, like, what's happening here? This is meant to be a friendly. The Premier League starts next week. But what probably I didn't know is Walter's sitting watching it, and he's loving it.
Yeah.
And he's loving what he's seeing. So again, timings-wise, it took me a little while to get in the team, but eventually I got back in the side.
Yeah, you got back in, I think, around October, November. I think John Collins got injured for the rest of the season. And there's a game that no one remembers the result in, because it's a game that Duncan Ferguson was sold during the game behind the manager's back, so the story goes. It was Newcastle at home. Before I ask you about your memories of that story, just Duncan, for me as an Evertonian, absolute hero. What's he like as a teammate on Belfield Monday to Friday, and what's he like to play with?
Yeah, good. Dunk was very good. When he wanted to be, he's the best player in the world. And he got up certainly for a lot of games, but Liverpool, Man U, he got up for them games, and Evertonians will tell you, that's when you knew like Duncan's going to be on fire today. There was like a different vibe and a different look about Dunk in the biggest games. He fancied it. Yeah. He fancied it. Great teammate, straight down the line. If you upset him, he'd tell you. Hard as nails. Like all of us, we probably weren't amazing trainers because training was not really a thing back then. It was like you train, you run hard. Fridays was always like a little bit of a Toro. We used to have a little pitch at at Belfield called Wembley, where you were only allowed on it on a Friday afternoon, and you only played little five-a-sides on there. But Dunk was one of those, I thought, and I got on well with Dunk. Not from the off. Took me a bit of a while for him to warm to me, because I think he had a circle, Dunk, where he had his mates, and he liked who he liked, and he had his circle, and he didn't let too many people in. And then all of a sudden, you get to know people. I used to sit bang opposite him every single morning at the training ground, so we ended up not having loads of conversation. But I can remember how the ice got broken, and Howard took us to Greece on a jolly, and we ended up having the most amazing time, and we ended up at a nightclub together, me, him, everyone really, Terry Phelan and everyone, and we ended up, me, him, and I think it might have been, I can't remember who it was, might have been Mitch Ward or someone, and we ended up just the three of us just chatting in a nightclub when everyone had gone home, and it was like finally I took all this time for Dunk to sort of let me in. He then let me in, and then I felt as though at any time then I could have a conversation with him, because he was like a pretty cool guy. But I wouldn't say he was shy, but he had like a persona and a vibe around him where if you were near him, you didn't want a conversation, you knew, and you just sort of go, oh, okay, Dunk's not in the mood today, But then after that time, I got on well with him until I ended up taking the armband off him, which set me straight back to square one.
Yeah,
and that was one of Walter's testing stories.
Yeah,
I can remember playing. Pretty sure it was Leeds at home, and we drew 0-0. And I had a really good game. And Walter took me off with about 15 minutes to go, and the crowd actually booed him for taking me off. And I remember sat in the dugout, and he spent the whole 15 minutes looking down the line at me to see if I was reacting to him taking me off. But I could feel like he was looking at me, so I knew. And I thought, anyway, the fans have let him know that I've had a good game, I'm all right. So we go in the dressing room afterwards, and he's obviously, he's distraught because we're having a tough time at the time. We couldn't score, couldn't win a game, drew another game 0-0. And he's come in and he's hammered everyone. He's gone through everyone. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's going to come to me in a minute. It's just, it's just the way it is. Just take it on the chin. Don't react. Whatever he says, just take it on the chin. So he's gone at me and he's gone on and on and on and on. And it feels like he's gone after me for about 10, 15 minutes. And then in the end, like I'm not biting. And he's got a Lucozade bottle. There's about 1,000 Lucozade bottles on the treatment table. And he's picked one up and he's launched it and it's like splashed behind me. And I've stood up and it like stupidly, like weirdly, as it bounced off the sort of shirts behind me, it landed like plumb right next to my right foot. So I've picked it up and I've just threw it back in. It's exactly what he wants. So I threw it back at him. He's come running over. He's got me by the throat. He's got me up against the wall. And he went, get your gear, get in the shower. You'll never play for this football club again. So I've gone in there and I'm like, should have just said nothing. Like you knew it was coming. Like I just flipped. So then the players started coming in. Gaffer was out of order there. Gaffer was out of order. Archie Knox, who was brilliant, he come then in. He went, you okay? And I went, not really. I said, what's? He went, go and see the gaffer in the boot room before you go. So I'm fuming, go in the boot room and Walter goes, you okay? I went, no. I said, what was all that about? I said, you know I've played well. I said, the fans have let you know I've played well today. I said, I'm not too bothered you've took me off. I went, it's your decision. I went, but don't say I was like, shaking my head and I was disrespectful. And then he went to me, he said, Dave Watson, hard man? And I've gone, yeah. And he went, Dave Unsworth, hard man? And I've gone, yeah. He went, Big Dunk, hard man? I've gone, yeah. He went, where were those three when I had you up against the wall? He went, you'll be captain Monday morning.
Wow.
So I was like, got in my car and I was like, what's happened there? Now I've got to go into Belfield on Monday, taking the armband off Dunk.
Yeah, wow.
Awful, mate, awful. And Dunk then, rightly so, he hated me after that for a period of time. Like, rightly so.
So I had to laugh. You were telling the story about being in the club and you were saying it was me, it was Duncan, and it was Mitch Ward.
But to be honest, it was Terry Phelan. I'll tell you the funny one. Do you remember Michael Branch?
Yeah.
He was in there nicking champagne from behind the bars. There was also, everyone was in there, and it was like the club, the manager was like really good at the nightclub. He'd shut the doors once everyone's gone, and there was just everyone, but everyone was scattered in like twos and threes, and it was just like, it wasn't, I tell you it was Danny Williamson.
Wow, that's a blast from the past. That's a massive blast.
Me, Danny Williamson and Dunk, and the three of us found ourselves in a little corner, chatting away, and that's how he sort of let me into his, into being quite close to him. But then obviously, got ruined when I took the armband off him, which was terrible.
Well, we spoke there briefly that Duncan was sold, that the story goes that it was behind the manager's back, and I think the fans revolted that much that Peter Johnson, the chairman, walked away and said, you can have the club if it means that much to you. And it took a while for Bill Kenwright to take over, but two players who tried to take over from Duncan and failed were Mikhail Madar and Ibrahima Bakayoko. For you, was the league too fast for them two, or because they didn't quite make it, did they?
No, Mikhail was a great lad and technically he was very good, but he didn't have too much pace. But he actually done quite well for us in that little period where I was saying before we were crap and we were terrible. He actually done quite well for us. He held the ball up and he was technically very good. Bakayoko was a strange one because he came in and he had everything.
Yeah.
Physically strong, could bully anyone, could score goals. But it was one of them where you never knew. That you get in a dressing room and you go, I know Kev's going to play today, Kev Campbell. I know what he's going to do. He might not score today, Kev, but I know exactly his game. Even if he's not playing well, I know exactly what his strengths are. And if he's having a mare, he'll rough the centre-halves up and he'll work hard, run the channels, he'll do everything he can. And you get these personalities where you know what you're going to get. And every now and again, you come across one player in your dressing room or two players in your dressing room, you think, I've got no idea what he's going to do today. And Bakayoko was one of them. I remember playing as a number 10 at Middlesbrough away. I don't know if it was in the league or the cup game, and he played as a 9, and the two of us, but more so him, was on fire, and he was brilliant. And I'm thinking like you need to do this every week, mate, because you are unbelievable. But he just wouldn't, and he couldn't. And then bizarrely, I think he got his move to Monaco and ended up playing in the Champions League, and it was like, I didn't see that coming. But tools-wise, he had a lot.
Well, we say that those two didn't work, and I think in around March 1999, we were back in trouble. You were the captain there, and we were playing with Danny Cadamarteri, Michael Branch, who were good young players, even Francis Jeffers as a very young striker. But it wasn't until Kevin Campbell came in really that our season turned around. He scored 9 goals in 8. We started battering teams. West Ham 6-0, Charlton 4-1, Newcastle 3-1. What was it like for you when Kevin came in as the captain of Everton Football Club to play with him and to see us shoot up the table?
The easiest player by far in my lifetime to play with, Kev. Oh. Honestly, me and him just had a relationship where never worked on it. Everything that sort of I thought he was going to do, my intuitions were there, which runs he was going to make. I look at Ross Barkley now, and I think I could solve Ross Barkley's problems within 5 minutes of chatting to him. And the trouble with Ross Barkley is he takes too many touches, and the strikers making movements in front of him, and their time's gone. Whereas I would get it, I'd take maximum 2 touches and I'd bang it into Kev, or I'd bang it down the sides of him from the run. And that's essentially what you've got to do as a midfield player. You've got to work hard, you've got to smash people, you've got to go box to box, you've got to defend, you've got to head, you've got to look after yourself, you've got to find your front men, and you've got to get assists. And Kev by far was the easiest player I've ever played with. And every time I got it, I looked for him. Franny was making Ian Rush type runs where, his 15-yard diagonal runs were so smart and so clever. Danny Cadamartri was a brilliant young player coming through. Bulldog of a player, loads of power, loads of pace. I remember him ruining Desai one day. Yeah, it could have someone we played Chelsea. But Kev was just a dream. Yeah. Just a dream to play with.
We had him on, and he said the same about you. He just said when I was playing with Don Hutchison, he said you and Scott Campbell, he said, were just so clever midfielders that to play in front of him. From me as a fan, he just came in after Duncan and put the cape on. He was the number 9 that we needed, and we went into the following season. I think we lost to Court, Materazzi, Bakayoko, and the team sort of became, I think it was you, John Collins, and Scott Gemmell, and in front was Barmby, Jefferson, Campbell, and it was just such a good team. What was that team like to play in for you?
Good, easy. I mean, I think we played Borough at home and we beat them 4 or 5, and we were, as you said, West Ham. We felt as though with those 3, and Scott Gemmell could look after the ball. John Collins never ever give the ball away. Yeah. I was like box to box and do a bit of ratting and trying to get goals and stuff. So the chemistry was good. We were starting to. Bally was like 2 or 3 seasons into now being an established left back. We had, guys at the back that were solid, dependable. Davy Weir then started to come in, so the age went down slightly, and but midfield, front, wide areas, it all felt like we were a good side. We felt as I remember playing in that Everton side at any time, and never felt inferior. Where sometimes you might go to Old Trafford and you might think like, we do well to keep this at 1. Yeah. Right? If we can nick a draw, we've done well. You don't want a battering. Same as Arsenal. There were some sides like the Arsenal Invincibles where, sometimes you're at your depth. In that period, in that season, or that 10 months with the boys that you just mentioned, I can remember going into games thinking, we'll give anyone a game here. Yeah. We'll beat Man U. We might not, but we'll beat Arsenal. We might not. We'll beat Chelsea. We might not. Instead of going into them thinking like, this is going to be a slog. Mm-hmm. Like, where's the goals coming from? Where's the creativity coming from? Where's the clean sheets coming from? It felt as though with that squad, that team, it was good. Yeah,
it adds a bit of everything. That 99-2000 season, I think for me was Walter Smith's best season as Everton manager. And then sadly, the team broke up, and we'll come to that in a moment. You were a large part, unfortunately, of that team breaking up. But I cannot have you on this podcast and upset Terry by asking you the question of the Merseyside derby in 1999. You captained Everton Football Club, going back to Anfield. Kevin Campbell scores at the Kop. What was that night like for you?
Oh, mate, it was incredible. You talk about atmospheres, and you talk about like a dozen games in your career you'd like to go back and resample and replay because of obviously the result, the fixture, the atmosphere in the stadium. Liverpool, I mean, it swings both ways. Whichever you think's the best atmosphere. Terry will say Liverpool, the Merseyside derbies at Anfield. I'm pretty sure you'll say Goodison and the Merseyside derbies. But I like to be in the Lions Den, as I said before. I liked it when it was hostile. So I can remember being at Wembley, playing for Scotland against England, national anthems, getting booed. I loved all that. So I loved walking out as captain. And ironically enough, Jamie Redknapp was captain of Liverpool on the night. And we won. Atmosphere was brilliant. Went through Deep Man Hammond about 3 or 4 times. If my memory serves me right, 3 men sent off in the game.
Absolutely
was that the
right,
same? No, that was a different game, wasn't it?
No, Francis Jeffers and Sander Westerveld.
Westerveld, yeah.
Did Gerrard get sent off?
Yeah.
Stevie G?
He came on and he absolutely whacked Kevin Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, he launched Kevin Campbell. So listen,
everything just came into the team there as well.
Yeah, so everything you want in a derby, brilliant game. amazing atmosphere, 2 good teams, excellent fans, 3 sent off, 3 red cards, yellows everywhere. And for Ian, Everton win.
Yeah.
And we scored the top end. And I was lucky enough that Andy Gray was on comms that night and he gave me man of the match. So that was like, what a night that was.
That's a night that's still spoke about. It wasn't until this season that we did one at Anfield since that game. It was that long, so it was an incredible.
I've been dining out on that result for like 20 years, whatever. I'm like the last captain to go there and win. I was devastated when they went and won last season. I'm joking.
Well, we touched upon there that this was your final season. As early as October, the media reports were saying that contract talks had stalled, and it wasn't until February that it was apparent that you were leaving. 1 minute you were there, next minute you weren't even on the bench. There was reports that the contract that you were offered you weren't too happy with, and that the club were now looking to sell an asset and get some money in for you.
Yeah.
What on earth happened in February 2000s that you went from being the Everton captain to not even being into a squad?
I'll tell you what happened, and I don't really like talking money, but money plays a part in the story, so I sort of have to. I was, as you know, coming from Sheffield United, one of the lowest paid players at the club. Right. So Kevin come in, his wages were high. John Collins, Materazzi, Decor, all astronomical earners, and I was on, I think at the time, about $4,000 a week.
Right.
Big boys were close to 30.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I never bothered myself on what other people were earning. And I can remember having the conversation with Walter about, trying to get closer to the big boys, if you like. And I remember sitting down and I chatted with him, and he told me, he said, this is how much Kev's on. This is how much Olivier Decor's on. This is how much John Collins is on, Materazzi's on. And he went through at the side and he went, and this is how much Nick Barmby's on. So he told me how much Nick Barmby was on. And I was on 4. And I don't really like telling about players' money, but I suppose I sort of have to, and it's been a long time. So Nick was on about 25, 26 at the time, grand a week. I was on 4. So Howard went, so Walter said, if I get you what Nick Barmby's on, would you take it? And I went, every day of the week. I went, sign it tomorrow. I went sign it tomorrow. So a few weeks sort of went by where I'm trying to get a meeting. So anyway, my agent comes up at the time, who was Rachel Anderson. I believe it was Michael Dumford, who was the chief executive at the time.
Right, yeah.
And Walter. And we went in the gaffer's room, and I'll never forget it. I was sat here, Walter was sitting opposite, Rachel Anderson sitting here, Michael Dumford sat there. So the sort of conversation went, well, Don's on 4/5, going through the years. This is how much we want. And then Michael Dumford said the most he's going to get is 8. So I'm sitting there thinking, I don't like being in these meetings for a start, but I know how they work. They'll start at 8. We'll ask for 30. It'll end up being about 25, whatever it might be. Happy days. So going back and forth, Michael Dunford's going no higher than 8. My agent's going like 30 because she knows, she's going to get pegged down a few. In the end, he just went, take it or leave it. There's no wriggle room in this. The club weren't financially sound at the time. There's no wriggle room in this 4-year contract. Take it or leave it. So the standard thing to do is, thank you very much. We'll move on. And then the next morning, I can remember, because the meeting must have been on a Thursday, and I can remember I came to Belfield in my tracksuit, and we were playing West Ham away, and you can check the records. We played West Ham away, and I went to see the gaffer up in his office up the stairs at Belfield, and him and Archie Knox were in there. And he went, I said, can I have a word, Gaffer? And he went, yeah. I said, Gaffer, just what happened yesterday? I said, you told me the lads' wages, you knew how much I was on. I went, what's happened there? And he went, what do you mean? And I went, well, you told me how much Nick Barmby was on. You told me how the lads are on. He went, I didn't tell you how much Nick Barmby was on. And I went, yeah, you did. And I said to him, and then by this time, Archie Knox has got his glasses. He's just got his head down, started doing his notes. And he went, and I remember he went, you calling me a liar? And I went, yeah. I said, because how would I know how much the big boys are on and how much Nick's on and what I'm on? And we're trying to get to a middle ground. He went, again, he come running over. He went, get your gear. He went home. He went, you ain't travelling with the squad today. So if you look at the records, that was the Friday. Everton travelled down to West Ham on the Friday. They played West Ham on the Saturday. They win 4 or 5. I think Nick Barmby scores a hat-trick, I think.
Yeah, 4-0, yeah.
4-0. that was it. I wasn't to be seen again.
Unbelievable.
Until about 3 months, where Walter got a spate of injuries, and then he played me at Leicester, and we drew 1-1. I scored a diving header.
And you scored, yeah. I remember, because you missed such a large chunk. I remember having Aston Villa in the quarter-final of the FA Cup at Goodison.
Yeah.
I think they had like Paul Mason in midfield. I was thinking,
Carboni, I think,
why is Don Hutchison in the stands instead of getting Everton to an FA Cup final?
That was it. I missed about 3-4 months because what Walter said to me at the time, which was, it was difficult to take, but he went. So when he obviously came back on the Monday and training was on, I went to see him again because I had to, and he went, right. He went, you got 2 options here, and I've gone, go on. He went, you can train at 2:00 in the afternoon at Belfield when everyone's gone home, so you won't see a soul. Or you can train with the kids, wherever the kids were training at that time, at 10:30. And I went, what? And he went, 2 choices, take your pick. And I went, well, I'll train at 2:00 then. So I used to come into Belfield at about sort of 1:00, and all the first teams were going out, and all the cars would be going out as I'm coming in. I used to put my kit on, go on the treadmill, do a run, do some weights, go out there. I had no one to train with, and just run around for like an hour. I'd done that every single day for weeks and weeks and months on end before that Leicester game.
From being the captain at the Everton Football Club to that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So how does the conversation go? And we had injuries, Kevin Campbell, Fanny Jeffers. I think he brought Mark Hughes in. It was 37, 38. How does the conversation go that you're back in the fold? Is it just, he just gives you a shirt again, or?
Yeah, I remember him pull up. I remember because, don't forget that was an era of hard managers, Graham Souness, Sir Alex Ferguson, Walter Smith. You don't mess with these managers. So whatever medicine you're going to get, you take on the chin. It wasn't a case of crying to the media and crying to your agent, because you just didn't do that. Like I said before, you're a man's man. You get on with your business and you take it on the chin and you graft your way through it. So he would have been looking out of his office. He would have been keeping an eye on timekeeping.
Yeah.
Did I have any days off? Not one. Did I come in on time every single day? Did I put the work in? Because Howard's office, Walter's office looked right over the back of Belfield where all the pictures are. So he would have been watching me. And then one day, he grabs me and he went, "You're back in the squad."
Wow. And
then there's no conversation to be like, well, what happened? You just go, okay, I'm back in the squad. And then I can remember going to Leicester, yellow, amazing away kit.
Yeah.
Scored the diving header, drew 1-1, back in the squad then.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then right after that Leicester game, again, this is one which Terry might be able to come back on. Merseyside derby, under the lights on Good Friday, a nighttime game. Sands of Westerveld kicks the ball at you. You're not even looking. The ball starts rolling into the net, and Graham Paul blows for full time. I think you surrounded him with Everton.
Everyone.
What was he saying?
He went full time. He went, "I blew for full time." He went, "I blew at full time," and everyone was going, "Lee, like there's 6 minutes on the clock. You blew it like 92 or something."
Yeah.
What he should have done was, in hindsight, because I'd walked across Sander Westerveld's line, and then he's blasted the ball off me and it's trickled over the line. And as it's gone over the line, he blew his whistle for full time, or as it's going over the line. What he should have done was, in hindsight, he probably should have blew and said he weren't 10 yards away. That might have been feasible. But blowing for full time when the clock's up there saying you're 3 minutes early, and it was like Graham Paul, and it was like the boys were going ballistic. And it's one of them games where, you just look back and you just think, how many of them stories have Evertonians got that they're getting robbed out of like a game or a derby or a massive game? It's ridiculous.
Terry, that's how spawny you are. It's been going on for decades. Decades.
River.
And just to really put the full stop on your Everton career, Don, summer 2000, I was looking at some research today, and I think you did come back for a few days of pre-season, and then you went to Sunderland. But in those few days, was there ever a chance that things could turn around, or was it too far gone? No,
it was sort of too far gone. Not ever sort of from my end, but it was like we didn't have the conversation of, it was never going to be a new contract on the sort of terms that I'd like. I was disappointed. I remember Paul Joyce, and I cannot remember the other guy's name who used to write for the Echo at the time, Dave Prentice.
Yeah. And
I was pretty disappointed in those two guys at the time, because I can't remember if it was Paul or I can't remember if it was Dave Prentice who called me, and I was obviously friendly. And I can remember you'd have to sort of Google the headline that they put, which was, I was very disappointed in those guys at the time. And I can remember saying, like, I was disgusted or I was distraught. And they put that headline "disgusted" in the back of the Echo. I keep saying back of the Echo because I think of Bakayokos. So we used to call them back of the Echo. And they put "disgusted" in the headline, and then they talked about the money, how much I was wanting. So it made me sound in the back of the Echo that day like it was pure greed. And I fell out with those two guys for not quite a while, but I was like, come on, guys, like you've done me a kipper there.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the context of the story. I was disgusted and I was disappointed at the outcome.
Yeah.
But you can't start anyway. So once we go back to pre-season and the last of the couple of days, it's never going to be Everton. Never going to come in and go, "Here's the money that you want."
Yeah.
It just wasn't going to happen.
Mate, I was absolutely gutted. I'm not even saying it because you're on.
I was the same, mate. I was the same.
We've seen some rubbish after you, John. Honestly, we've seen Alex Nyarko, who had a fan walk on the pitch and beg to swap shirts. We just seen some going back to like Morgan Schneider a couple of years ago. Our midfield has been in turmoil for years. I was devastated. You weren't the only midfielders to leave that summer. You left the same week as John Collins and Nick Barmby. Now, despite you leaving with them, how did you view such a controversial move, Nick Barmby going directly across to Stanley Park?
Well, I remember being in a conversation with Nick, and I think, and he might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was going to go to Man United. He was originally going to go to Man U, but Walter wouldn't sell him to Sir Alex. He didn't want to let Nick Barmby go to Man United and make them stronger,
right? Which
ironically is ridiculous because he ended up signing and selling him to Liverpool, which doesn't sort of make any sense whatsoever.
No.
So it's like one of them. So I think he actually. So I even think he sort of pissed Nick Barmby off a little bit, if you like. Because he wanted to go to Man U. Well, certainly that's where he thought he was going. But he obviously was, over the moon going to Liverpool. But it was. I mean, I can't remember where John went. Where did John go leaving?
He went to Fulham. He dropped down the league.
Yeah.
He would drop down the league because I think John Tagana was his friend, and he was doing a bit of coaching and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was yes. I mean, for Evertonians, it's not a great 3 to lose, is it?
Absolutely not. I was devastated.
What's happened there?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird one as a Liverpool fan with Barmby, really, coming across, because it was, I think we all knew he was a good player, but I think there was a bit of sort of looking at it. I think Evertonians sort of look at it and think we were all sort of, made up and rub it in the face. But I remember as a Liverpool fan being just a little bit sort of suspicious of it, sort of, is he going to be good enough or, sort
He's
of.
definitely good enough, Bombs. Bombs was definitely good enough.
Yeah, he was a good player, yeah. Yeah,
the most Everton thing ever, Terry. The most Everton thing ever done is guess who scored first goal in the Merseyside derby that season?
No, it wasn't, was it?
Yeah, Nick. Yeah. First game.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
No, Tom. I mean, we appreciate your time. I know we've kept you a long time.
No, it's fine, mate. I could talk footy all day.
We've been dying to get you on. Just a little story for our listeners. I mean, we've absolutely hammered on. He's been so kind to give us some time because me and Terry are both massive fans of what he's done for both clubs. Just to wind it down from my point of view, Don, can you give us your thoughts on the season ahead for Everton Football Club? I know you've mentioned in some media outlets about Rafa, maybe a recipe for chaos. How are you feeling now, 4 weeks on from the initial shock?
Yeah, I don't think recipe for chaos. I think he'll work hard, and I think he'll get the group of players together. And I think the signings that he's made, especially Andros Townsend, great pro. He'll help the young kids. He'll sacrifice himself for the greater good of the team. He's that sort of pro. And I'd like to think Damari Gray needs now to get his head down because he was a brilliant player at Leicester, but just lost his way. I just worry, and it's not. Well, it may be because it's one of them where I say it's not about the Liverpool Everton connection, but subconsciously it probably is because. I know he says it's out of context, but when he called Everton a small club, which obviously riled the Evertonians, and Terry will be able to tell you about the style of football at Liverpool at the time might not have been amazing, but he'd done a good job. Newcastle fans, as I am, he played the political card against the fans of Mike Ashley. His style of football has never really been amazing. So I think the hard thing is. I said the other day, I worked on 5 Live the other day, and I said the hard thing is if I was a fly in the wall in the room upstairs in the boardroom, and Farhad Mashiri's in there, Bill Kenwright and Marcel Brands is in there, and they're talking about losing Carlo Ancelotti, the conversation is probably we need a big name. We need a big name. So therefore, that's why I think they've gone for Rafa. I don't think it was Bill Kenwright's first choice. I think he quite fancies Roberto Martinez. In my personal opinion, I think you should have went for Graham Potter. I think he would have stabilised the club. I think he would have played good football. Results might have been indifferent, but you would have seen a style. I just worry on that first game of the season, if Everton lose against Southampton at Goodison on the first day of the season, normally a manager normally gets close to a season. I just worry if they lose that first game, Everton, and it's Leeds after. The fixtures are quite kind for the first 5.
Yeah.
So he has to get off to a good start. If he doesn't, I just can't see how he goes past the season.
No, I'm the same. I've said
I'm one of them.
I've said, yeah.
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. I'd love to be wrong, by the way, because I'm not. I'm not like, you know. I'm a blue. I'm a red. I want these guys to do well. I play for both clubs, so I want Everton and Liverpool to do well. So I honestly, sincerely hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I think if he's there in 2 years' time, then we'd have to have a good period. So for me, I'm like you. I mean, the recipe for chaos is my term. I think it is a recipe for chaos, but let's hope not.
It might just be, again, Ian, it might just be a case of not the right manager at the wrong time, but it might be a little bit of that where you think, in my opinion, I think the top 4's set. I think, Liverpool, Man City, Man U, Chelsea. I think no one's breaking that top 4 this season. So therefore, you've got Everton, Leicester, Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham, all vying to be knocking on the door for top 4, which, in my humble opinion, it won't happen. So therefore, he's got to get European football this season to be a success. So he's going for 2 places out of 6 or 7 teams. That's not easy.
Yeah, very tough. Very tough. What about on the Liverpool side, Don? Obviously, we didn't have our best season last season. Still managed to finish 3rd, a bit miraculously, actually. I think it looked like the wheels were really going to fall off and we were going to, tumble down and maybe not even get a European place. But what are you thinking in terms of, obviously, under Jurgen Klopp, we being a serious side? Are you expecting that to back to normal under Klopp next season?
I'm optimistic, mate. I'm looking at the first time in a long time where I think Sadio Mane's had a rest. Mo Salah's had a rest. Normally these guys have played, through different competitions through the summers. Firmino the same, if he's been playing in competitions throughout the summers. I'm looking at a team now that's, hopefully looks a little bit fresh. Konate's a great signing from Leipzig. Got competition with Joe Gomez and Matip and Van Dijk. Hopefully gets through. There's a game tonight against Hertha Berlin. I'm not sure if he's starting the game, but he gets his minutes. And then you got that front 3. Obviously, fires. I hear by all accounts that Harvey Elliott's had a really good season. So if Liverpool moved Shaqiri on, you can see him taking that step closer to the first team. So the squad is strong. And as I said, I think last season was obviously a hard watch because there was some games. I mean, just harping back to the Everton scenario, I remember watching Everton against Newcastle and Fulham and been thinking, it just stunk the place out. Everton, terrible. Yeah. And I remember watching Liverpool in all those games that they drew and lost. The West Broms and all the teams down at the bottom didn't lay a glove on them. And I'm thinking, this is not like Liverpool. They look absolutely shattered. Like they look as though they've gone, like their legs have gone. And you take the hub of what Liverpool have been great at, which is their holding midfield players, in Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. And it was never a case of really that they let too many goals in because they're good players and they can defend. It was taken away from the attacking side because they weren't getting the balls quick enough to the front men. So with a fresh squad and a fully fit squad, I'm hoping that they contend for the league. I'm pretty sure they will. I think it'll be a 4-horse race. If Chelsea don't buy a number 9, I don't think they get close. I think they'll contend for quite a while. Man U look pretty strong. But I think when all's said and done and we get past Christmas in January, I think it'll be Liverpool and Man City vying for it.
Okay. I think you're right. I mean, I'm confident that I was looking at last year thinking, we're going to have to really, rip it up and change things because the 4-2-3 has been worked out. The way that the players do get a bit flogged under a Klopp system, in what they're expected to do. But I am looking at it now, like similar to what you said there, in terms of getting players back fully fresh, fit, and Henderson back from injury, Van Dijk back from injury, and I think on the first 12 or 13, 14 players in that squad can go toe to toe with anyone.
Definitely. So, even Jota, he's been at the club now for 6 or 7 months. So he was electric when he first come in, then got his injury, and then was great again. So optimistic.
Okay. Like we said, it's at the end there, it's on. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Just 2 more questions, if you don't mind, just for both sets of supporters. If you can give us your best memory in a red shirt and your best memory in a blue shirt.
Best memory in a red shirt, probably making my debut, scoring on my debut against Chef Wed in the driving rain. My family were down from Newcastle. I went for a volley on the edge of the box. I remember going for pure technique and I hit the worst strike ever into the floor and it bounced over England's number 1 at the time, which is the spawniest goal I've ever scored in my life. But on my home debut, winning 1-0, I'll take that. And I think as sad as it's to say, Ian, it's probably the Coventry game.
Yeah.
And that moment I had with Howard.
Yeah.
Because if the Coventry game didn't happen, I wouldn't have had the 60 seconds I had with Howard in the boot room.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I said before that story had my hairs on my arm standing up. I imagine every Evertonian listening who's got memories of that game or memories of you in a blue shirt with Howard as the manager felt the same. Don, I think we've come to a natural end. I think Terry's dying to get off and watch the Hertha Berlin game. I imagine you're the same. It's just so refreshing, and to see a man who loves both clubs as blatant as you do, it's quite unique. But Mr. Don Hutchison, thank you so much for joining Across the Park podcast.
Anytime, guys. Don't leave it so long. We'll do this again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant.